بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Today we continue the discussion of the statement of Imam al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةَ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ وَنَجْتَنِبُ الشُّذُوذَ وَالْخِلَافَ وَالْفُرْقَةِ. That we follow the Sunnah and the Jama'ah and we avoid being isolated and falling into differing and falling into splitting. So in the previous lesson we explained how this is one of the important distinguishing foundations of the people of the Sunnah. We looked at the words of Sheikh Zayd al-Madkhali rahimahullah ta'ala and spoke generally about how this is from the most distinguishing characteristics of those who follow the way of the Salaf. We looked at some evidences from the Quran, we looked at some evidences from the Sunnah. We explained that in the foundations of the religion, in the major affairs of usul, in matters of belief, that the people of the Sunnah don't differ and they have never differed. And so today we're going to continue with that discussion. And so on this statement of Imam al-Tahawi, وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةَ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ, we follow the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, there are numerous issues. The first of those issues is, what is the meaning of al-ittiba'? Al-ittiba', because he said, وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةَ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ, we follow. So this word ittiba', nattabi'u, ittiba'. What is the meaning of al-ittiba'? So this word al-ittiba', it means the literal meaning would be that you follow tracks. When you see tracks, for example, which are in the ground. So for example, you might see the track of an animal, the footprints, or you see there are other types of tracks. This is literally what you mean, that one person follows the tracks. And these tracks, when we speak about this track or this what we call a dalil, which is an evidence or something that points to something else, then it can be either in terms of a track in terms of like a journey, or in terms of the speech of a person, right? So he gives you direction and he gives you, at this point there will be such and such thing, and at that point there will be such and such thing, and at that point there will be such and such thing. So what he's giving you adillah, he's giving you indications, right, as to which way to go. So whether you see them physically or whether you are told them verbally, right, this is what we mean, that a person is taking knowledge and he's following with evidence, right? So you can see how this meaning enters into both senses, right? So he's following the tracks on the ground, he's following the path with the evidences that he sees. He's following the trail with the evidences. Or someone is telling him of the evidences, and he's following upon that way. This is what we mean by ittiba'. And that's why this word ittiba', what it means in the Islamic sense that we are speaking of here, it means that a person takes the statement of another person with its evidence. This is the meaning of al-ittiba'. It means أخذ القول بدليله. To take the statement, meaning of an alim, of a scholar or whatever, with its evidence. The statement with its evidence. And so this ittiba' is different to at-taqleed. At-taqleed is blindly following. It means that you take the saying of a person or you accept the saying of a person without any clear evidence, without any apparent evidence. And this, so we can see the difference here now, that someone who's making ittiba', he's making ittiba' because he sees an evidence presented by the alim, by the scholar, or by someone else. And the one who is making taqleed, or the one who is a muqallid, then he is simply acting upon the saying of the alim, of the scholar, but without there being any evidence. And we see that this individual, really, he's making ta'assub. Maybe he has some partisanship or affiliation, and so he's one of those blind followers. And the only reason he is following him is because the alim said it. That's why he's following. Not because the alim has or is presenting evidence for that particular statement. Right? So this is ittiba' and this is taqleed. And this is especially so with the muqallid, when evidence is established to show that he is incorrect in what he is following. So really, the muqallid, then he is someone who makes the mere speech of an alim to be the thing that he is bound to, and the thing that he is following, and the thing which he is sticking to. So that's the difference between al-ittiba' and taqleed. And there are some important differences between there are some important issues here regarding taqleed in the issue of belief. Right? Can a person make taqleed in the issue of his belief, the i'tiqad in his heart? And so the scholars, they make some tafsil in this issue, some detail, and they say that anything in which a person's iman and his Islam, for it to be correct, it is not permissible to make taqleed in those issues. A person cannot make taqleed in the foundation. And he has to take issues with the evidences in these types of issues. Because this knowledge is something that Allah Himself has commanded. So for example, Allah says in the Quran, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ. That know that there is none which has a right to be worshipped except Allah, and seek forgiveness for your sin. This is Surah Muhammad, Surah 47, verse number 19. So here Allah has commanded with having the knowledge, knowing and understanding that there is none which has the right to be worshipped except Allah alone. So here in this issue, in the matter of Tawheed, it's not permissible for any person to say, well, because so-and-so person is saying La ilaha illallah, because so-and-so person is whatever, then I will say the same thing. This is blind following. Rather, in these types of issues, he has to have the knowledge. He has to believe that because Allah said in the Quran, because the messenger, this is what the messenger called to, this is why I believe what I believe. Not because Fulan and Fulan and Fulan, he said whatever he said. This is taqleed in the foundation of the religion, and this is not correct. It is not acceptable and not permissible. Now, so this is the first issue in the issues of belief and the foundational issues in which a person's Islam and Iman are dependent. There's no taqleed in those types of issues. Now, the second situation is, for example, when an alim, when a scholar, he looks into the Quran, he looks into the Sunnah, and he finds evidence for certain things. He sees an evidence in a hadith for a certain thing. And what he's doing here is that he's making istidlal. Istidlal meaning that he is deriving evidence. He is deducing evidence from these texts. Now here, a person can take the statement of this alim, statement of the alim, and he knows why the scholar is saying what he's saying, because the scholar has said, here's the hadith, and from this hadith we see this is derived, and that is the evidence for such and such. Right? Here in this in this situation, a person who is satisfied with what the alim has said and is satisfied with the evidence in the way that he's brought the evidence, then this, to follow an alim in these issues, this is fine. In fact, this is really a type of ittiba'. And the reason for this is that not everybody has the ability and the knowledge to make such an istidlal, to make such an evidence, to deduce evidence from the texts of the Quran or the Sunnah. So for example, if Shaykh Ibn Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, Shaykh Al-Albani, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh Al-Fawzan, Shaykh Zayd, any of the ulama, they present you a hadith and say this hadith indicates such and such. You wouldn't, if you don't have the knowledge and the ilm, you wouldn't have the knowledge to derive such things from the hadith. But when you see it presented to you, and you think, well, yes, that makes sense, that's acceptable, and I agree with this, deduction of evidence. Here, what you're doing it's kind of ittiba'. It is ittiba' because you are taking the statement of an alim with its evidence, even though you yourself are not in a position to be deriving and deducing and to understand by yourself in your own right those ahadith, to be able to take those evidences from them. So here in this situation, this is permissible because you are being given the understanding of the evidence by an alim, and most people are not able to have this ability because it requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of sciences to be able to do that. So this is the tafsil in this issue. And so what is wajib upon everybody is to make ittiba', to follow with evidence, to follow a saying with its evidence. And it is haram to make taqleed in the usul of Islam, in the foundations of Islam, like for example the shahadatain, the testimonials, because no one can testify on your behalf. You have to make the testimonial. You have to make the testification, the shahada. And likewise, the pillars of Iman, belief in Allah, the angels, the books, the messengers, you have to believe them because Allah ordered you to believe in them. Not because so-and-so person said, but because you know that this is evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah with respect to these issues. And likewise, knowing the obligation of the pillars of Islam. Why is a person praying? Is he praying because that's what he sees the people around him praying? Or is he praying because he knows Allah commanded it in the Quran and the Sunnah? And that's the difference, right? So in all of these major issues, matters of belief, the pillars of Iman, the foundation of Tawheed, and even the great and the major obligations like the prayer, the fasting, all of that has to be upon ilm, upon knowledge, upon evidence, knowing that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, so once this is clear, now this brings us to another issue that the scholars discuss when it comes to making ittiba', which is that does a person have to continuously have the evidence in his mind for something, right? In other words, is it a condition, for example, that when a person does a deed, does an action, that he has to know the evidence at that particular point in time and keep the evidence in his mind, right? This is a question that the scholars discuss. And the scholars say it is not a condition. It's not a condition. Rather, what is required is that if he knew that issue once in his lifetime with the evidence, then afterwards maybe he forgot it or he didn't come to his mind again, then this is acceptable. Let's give some examples. For example, a person is given the evidence that one of the conditions of wudu is that there has to be order in the way that he does everything, right? So he washes the hands and he does everything else that follows. The tartib has to be there. So at one time in his life, maybe as a child who now has to pray, or as a person who's entered Islam newly, and he's told that here is the evidence for wudu like this, and this is how it should be done. Now, does he have to remember that evidence and understand the way the proof was derived from the verse or from the hadith for the rest of his life? The answer is no. His ibadah is still accepted and valid, even if he does not remember that evidence, for the rest of his life. As long as he knew it once in his life with its evidence, then that will benefit him and is satisfactory for him. So this applies if a person reflects upon many of the things that he or she does from the acts of worship. You'll find that in the majority of cases you will not be able to recall the evidence for something, or if you can recall the text, what is the angle of deducing the evidence in many of the things that we do. So as I said, some more examples. A person might know that facing the Qibla is a sharat, a condition of the prayer, and maybe he might have read the evidence once, and then afterwards he's forgotten. Abbas. So here we see that it is not necessary as part of ittiba' that you remember each and every single evidence and the istidlal, and you keep it in your mind, and it has to be there when you do the act of worship. No, because this would be a great burden upon the Muslim ummah. So this is sufficient, and likewise it applies to other things as well. For example, a person, he knows the meaning of the shahada once in his life, and he knows and understands it, or he knows the evidences for the pillars of iman, or he knows the evidences for the obligation of the 5 obligations, the four practical obligations, the prayer, the fasting, the zakah, and the hajj. He knows all of these, and then he forgets the evidences. This does not make him sinful, right? So the key thing is that at the beginning, when he submitted, it was done on the foundation of evidence for those things which Islam is not valid without those evidences, without that knowledge, right? As long as he knows them once in his life, and those things which make his Islam to be correct, then this is fine. So here then, this is a clarification of taqleed in the foundational matters of the religion. And so, think carefully about what we've said. We've said that the obligation is to make al-ittiba' in the foundations of the religion, right? In the matters of belief, in the matters of the obligations of Islam, in the issue of tawheed, right? The basis that we follow is that we make ittiba' of the evidences of revelation. And then we made some detail as to, is it permissible to make taqleed and, in other issues. Now, why is this important for us to understand? It's important because there are people who oppose the Sunnah and the Jama'ah. They oppose Ahlul Sunnah. And these are the people of Kalam, Ilmul Kalam, the Asha'ira, the Mu'tazila, and other than them, and various other Jama'at. And what they do is the knowledge that they make obligatory is something else. Right? So what have we said? We said that the knowledge which is obligatory with Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah is to follow with evidences, with a dalil, in the foundations of the religion. Right? The 6 pillars of Iman, the meaning of the Shahada, the great outward obligations, to have knowledge of them with evidence. And they say that taqleed in those issues will not benefit, is not beneficial. These people, what they say is, what do they make the obligatory knowledge? Right? So our obligatory knowledge is evidence for these things and then following the evidence. Meaning it is from the Sharia. These people say it is another awil qasd ila another. What does this mean? What these people say, they say that the first obligation upon a person is to start looking and reflecting in the universe, and to start making observations, and to understand the proof for Allah's existence. The proof for Allah's existence. Why? Because they claim that the first obligation is to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with rational evidences, with intellectual evidences. And this is a mistake, because this is false. Because the first obligation is for a person to make the shahadatain. This is the first obligation upon any person upon this earth, is to make the shahadatain, to say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. This is the first obligation. And of course the people who came before Islam, they would have to make the shahadatain as well with respect to Isa or Musa and so on and so forth. But the first obligation is to affirm the shahada, the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and enter into the ibadah. And this is because every person is born with the fitrah. Every person automatically knows and acknowledges the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So proving the existence of Allah is not the first obligation. But these people, this is what they made the foundation of Islam and the foundation of Iman to rest upon. To prove the existence of Allah by rational evidences, by intellectual evidences. So therefore, what is the first knowledge that they make obligatory? They make the first knowledge obligatory to be an-nadhar wal istidlal, which means observation and deduction. Observation and deduction, that you look and then you try to find evidences to prove Allah's existence. And now you can see clearly the difference between the way of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, who follow the wahi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and between these people who are really following the way of the philosophers and the scientists, whether of the past or whether of the present, in starting with the observation of the universe and then building the knowledge on top of that, right? Or if you want to call it the scientific method or whatever else you want to call it, this is how they start and build the basis of their knowledge. So all of this is incorrect. As for Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say that the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is already within the person's fitrah. It is rooted in a person's fitrah. And the first thing that is obligatory upon him is to start learning what he needs to believe about the affairs of the unseen, about Allah's names, about Allah's attributes, about paradise, hellfire, about his obligations, what has Allah commanded him, and what is it that distinguishes between iman and kufr, and a believer and a kafir. So these are the things he needs to learn, and taqleed is not permissible in those types of issues, right? Whereas, and this is the important thing to understand, what is taqleed to these people, to the Ash'aris, the Mu'tazila? We say taqleed is not permissible in relation to the foundations of Islam. You cannot make taqleed in those issues. You have to know it with evidence from the Sharia, right? These people, they say taqleed is to believe in Allah without knowing the rational evidences. Do you understand that, yeah? To believe in Allah without knowing the intellectual evidences. This is what they call the blameworthy taqleed. This is taqleed which is haram to them, right? So they say that if you cannot rationally prove the existence of Allah, and you believe in Allah just because your parents are believing in Allah, or whatever else, then your iman, this is blameworthy taqleed. Yeah? Some of them say that this actually invalidates a person's Islam. Some of them, the extremists amongst them, from the Ahlul Kalam, that's what they say. And others say, it's permissible, but he's treated to be a jahil, muqallid, and whatever else. But this is incorrect. This is incorrect, because a person does not need to know the proofs for Allah's existence, in order to worship Allah alone, because his existence is already established in the fitrah. As the Messenger of Allah said, that every child is mawlud, is born ala al-fitrah, upon the fitrah. So this is an important thing to understand, that when we speak of taqleed, the blameworthy taqleed, we say it is not permissible in the foundations of Islam in terms of evidences in the Sharia. You have to know it with its evidence from the Sharia. And you are following it because you know its evidence from the Sharia. Whereas to these people, the taqleed, the blameworthy taqleed, is that you have to know the rational or scientific or intellectual evidences for Allah's existence, and taqleed in that is not permissible. So you can see how it's misplaced, their understanding of taqleed in relation to this particular matter. So that's the first point, that's the first issue in relation to taqleed in matters of belief. Taqleed in the foundations of the religion. And the difference between Ahlul Sunnah and between the people of Kalam. This now brings us to the second issue, which is what is the meaning of as-sunnah? We mentioned ittiba', nattabi' as-sunnah. So what is as-sunnah? What is the meaning of the sunnah? The sunnah is referring here to the knowledge which has been inherited from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The knowledge which has been passed on in the matters of belief, in i'tiqad, in matters of the unseen, And likewise, anything whose evidence is from the statement of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or his actions, or from his guidance, all of that is from the sunnah. And we see that the scholars give definitions for the sunnah, say that the sunnah is whatever the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam he did, whatever he said, and whatever he approved of that was done or said in his presence. His qawl, his fi'l, and his iqrar or taqreer, his affirmation of whatever was done in his presence or said in his presence. That all of this is the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the sunnah is something which is obligatory to follow, and it is prohibited to depart from the sunnah. But we see that when the word sunnah is used, the word sunnah is used here by Imam al-Tahawi, and likewise by many of the early scholars. When they said we follow the sunnah, they are referring to those issues of belief. Those issues of belief in which there was no difference amongst the Sahaba. Right? Issues like, for example, al-Iman, issues of al-Qadr, issues of Allah's names and His attributes. All of those foundational issues, then when the scholars were writing books in the 2nd, 3rd centuries, and they began to call these books, they give the title of these books as Sunnah. For example, as-Sunnah, Kitab as-Sunnah of Al-Khallal, Usul as-Sunnah of Imam Ahmad, and likewise of his son Abdullah. He also has a book, Kitab as-Sunnah, and Ibn Abi Asim, and there are so many books which are called as-Sunnah in that period. And in all of these books, what do we see? We see that they are mentioning issues of belief. So you can see the understanding of the Salaf, that when they use the word sunnah, they mean the issues and the foundations of belief. And that's why, for example, in Imam Ahmad's Usul al-Sunnah, when he says Usul al-Sunnati indana at-tamassuk bima kana alayhi ashabu Rasulullah to the end, what he means here are the issues of belief, aqeedah, and the issues of methodology, of manhaj. All of those things together. And what is not meant, there are some understandings of the sunnah that the scholars explain, like for example, sunnah is anything which is not wajib. Right? This is with the fuqaha, with the jurists. This is not what it's meant. Likewise, sunnah is whatever the Messenger, what he did, what he said, and what he approved of. This is a correct definition of the sunnah, which is made by the scholars, and that's a technical definition. Again, that is not what is meant here when the word sunnah is being used. And there are some other definitions as well. And so the point being here that when we look in the books of the Salaf and they use the word sunnah, this is largely what is meant. It is the matters of usul, the foundational matters. in the affairs of Tawheed, in the affairs of Aqeedah, in the affairs of the major parts of belief. What is Iman? What is Qadr? The names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A position towards the rulers, how to behave towards the rulers, both in matters of belief and in methodology. Then this is what is meant by the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the point being that because this is knowledge which is inherited from the Messenger, we simply follow that knowledge. We simply follow that Sunnah. It is not something that we start using our reason, our rationale, our minds. We don't dispute into those issues. No. Rather, we simply follow the Sunnah which is narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is the second issue. What is the meaning of Sunnah? وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ. This now leads us to the third issue. And the third issue is what is the meaning of al-jama'ah. Al-jama'ah. وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ. Now the word jama'ah is used with two meanings. The first meaning is that the jama'ah is the jama'ah in the deen, in the religion. Meaning the jama'ah, meaning unity in terms of the knowledge of what Allah commanded we should believe in. And knowledge of what Allah ordered that we believe in. That we believe in the akhbar, in the narrations that have come in the Quran and the Sunnah. So here now this is a unity in terms of what the hearts believe. That we all have to believe in the same thing. It's not permissible for one Muslim to believe this thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in every place. And another Muslim is believing Allah is above the heavens and above the heavens and the throne. We can't have two different. This is tafarruq in i'tiqad. This is haram, not permissible. So the first sense of the word al-jama'ah is it refers to what the hearts believe. Al-jama'ah in terms of belief. Right? This is one meaning of the word jama'ah, that we are upon a single deen. We are upon a single deen. If you look at the Muslimin today, they are not upon a single deen. In many different issues. They're on so many different deens, meaning that those which are from within Islam, and some of them are beliefs of kufr, which are outside the deen of Islam. But in terms of, in this sense, the Muslims are not a jama'ah. They were a jama'ah in the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And after that, they became splits. Khawarij, Qadariyya, Murjiya, Jahmiya, Mu'tazila, Asha'ira. And so they broke away from the jama'ah. So the first sense is al-jama'ah in the deen, meaning that which is believed and held onto from that which Allah informed us that we should believe. The second meaning of the word jama'ah is al-jama'ah fil abdan. Fil abdan. The first jama'ah is jama'ah in the deen, in the religion, in the affairs of belief. The second jama'ah is jama'ah in the abdan, meaning that the bodies should be together. They should be united as a body, and that there should not be strife between them or discord between them, and they shouldn't be separated in their bodies from each other. Now, so these are the two meanings of the word jama'ah. Now, when you look at this statement, وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةِ وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةِ, think about these words. We mentioned ittiba. What is the meaning of ittiba? We mentioned the Sunnah, what is meant by the Sunnah in the context of these books of belief. It is referring to the major aspects of our religion in belief, in the foundations. What this leads to, this shows that when we believe those matters of belief and foundations, it automatically leads to jama'ah in both senses of this word. Do you understand? In the sense of the hearts being united, having a single belief, and in the sense of the bodies being united, meaning being physically together. So following the Sunnah leads to the jama'ah in both of these meanings, in both of these senses. And so there's unity in the deen, al-ijtima'u fi deen, wal-ijtima'u fil abdan. And that's why when you look into the books of Aqeedah, the books of usul, and you see that every single issue that is discussed in these books, you see that all of these issues of creed and methodology are such that they lead to the jama'ah. Unity in the hearts, one belief in the hearts, and unity in the bodies as well. So, if you look at, for example, the issues of belief in Allah, His names, His attributes, paradise, hellfire, punishment in the grave, belief in the angels, belief in the jinn, belief in the previous messengers, belief in paradise, hellfire, right? These are things that we are told to believe, right? And when we have this belief, our hearts become united around this belief. But on top of this, there are other things as well. Like, for example, we are ordered to obey the rulers in that which is good. This maintains unity in the bodies. We are prohibited of falling into innovation or following the people of innovation, those who dispute about the signs of Allah and deviate. We are prohibited from sitting and being with them. This again maintains the unity of the jama'ah. And so there are many usul. We are prohibited from splitting. All of that together we see as a whole, it maintains the jama'ah in both of these two, with both of these two meanings and senses. So, now, after all of this, وَنَتَّبِعُ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ, this word, as-sunnah wal-jama'ah, now therefore has become a label, has become a sign and a label for the very first jama'ah, which is the jama'ah of the Sahaba. So they were the very first Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. They are the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah. And this is what the people of Hadith, the people of the Ashabul Hadith, this is what they are upon. And the various other words that we have, Ahlul Athar, the people of the narrations, Ashabul Hadith, the people of Hadith, all of them, they are those who never deviated and departed from affairs of belief. And anyone who follows them, he is said to be Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now, this leads us to another issue, which is that some of the later scholars from the later Hanbalis, there were some from the later Hanbali scholars, who made a mistake and they began to include some of the other sects like the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. They began to include them into the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Like, for example, one of the Hanbali scholars from a number of centuries ago, As-Safarini, he has a number of books, and in those books, and in a particular book, Lawami' al-Anwar, he says that Ahlul Sunnah are of three groups: the people of Hadith wal Athar, the Ash'aris, and the Maturidis. And this is a mistake. This is refuted by Ibn al-Uthaymeen and many of the ulama. They said this is a mistake. This is not correct. Rather, the Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah are those who follow the way of the Salaf. Those who follow the way of the Salaf, they are Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. But this is a mistake because we see that these Ash'aris and Maturidis, they oppose the people of the Sunnah in fundamental matters. Fundamental matters. And when you oppose in fundamental matters, then of course this is going to be a separation from the Jama'ah. Because remember we said that the meaning of the word Jama'ah is in two senses. Jama'ah in terms of the deen, in terms of what you believe, and Jama'ah in terms of the bodies, that your bodies are united. And the deen of Islam is such that it unites the people in both senses of the word Jama'ah. So as soon as somebody comes along and he now opposes what the messenger came with in these issues, then he is separating from the Jama'ah automatically. Automatically he's separating from the Jama'ah. He can no longer be Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah because he's contradicted Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And so we see that the Ash'ari, the Ash'aris and the Maturidis from the people of Kalam, they oppose the people of the Sunnah in fundamental matters. For example, the one that we already mentioned earlier on, in respect to the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and proving the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have opposed the way of the Quran, and they brought an innovated way of saying that everybody has to, start looking and investigating into the universe and proving rationally the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making nazar wal istidlal, using the scientific method and whatever else, this is batil. This is the first thing that they opposed what the messengers came with. This is not what the messengers came with. This is a fundamental issue. Likewise, and in fact on top of this, they built all of their corruption in the affairs of belief upon this mistake in this fundamental matter. Likewise, in explaining the meaning of La ilaha illallah. What is the meaning of La ilaha illallah? Ahlul Sunnah say, meaning of La ilaha illallah is that no one has the right to be worshipped in truth except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas those people, they oppose the Quran and the Sunnah because of the method they claimed by which a person comes to know of Allah's existence. They said the meaning of La ilaha illallah is there is no creator besides Allah. This is not the meaning of La ilaha illallah, because that's what the Christians say. That's what the Jews say. Even the Hindus believe in an overall supreme creator. In fact, there is hardly a person. Most of the nations on this earth, none of them have actually denied that there is an overall supreme creator. This is not the meaning of La ilaha illallah. Whereas this is the meaning that you find in the books of the Ash'aris and other than them. This is correct. So they erred in the meaning of the tafsir of La ilaha illallah. And that's why amongst the Ash'aris and Maturidis, because they made this mistake, and when they spread as a group from the 4th and the 5th centuries onwards, and they wrongly thought that La ilaha illallah means to believe in a creator, that there is no one who creates but Allah. And at the same time we saw shirk emerged in the ummah and attachment to the graves through those Rafidi Shia Batiniya in North Africa, the Ubaidis, and it began to spread, and Tasawwuf and Sufism began to spread. Then these people fell into shubuhat, into doubts and misconceptions about affairs that eventually led many of them to fall into that which is clear shirk, such as making istighatha, calling upon the dead for rescue, making dua to the dead for shafa'ah, and things like that. Things which are clear shirk. This is another fundamental matter in which they have opposed the Sunnah and the Jama'ah. Likewise, in Allah's names and attributes, in terms of Allah's names and attributes, they opposed the Sunnah and the Jama'ah. And likewise, in the issue of Iman, what is Iman? Iman is something that is in the heart. It is the speech of the tongue. It is the actions of the limbs. All of these are from the reality of Iman. They are part and parcel of Iman. An outward action is from Iman as well. They opposed all of this, and they said Iman is just tasdeeq in the heart. That you just believe Allah exists, and you believe in the Quran and the Messenger, and you don't have to make the shahada, you don't have to bring the outward actions. You are a complete believer just by knowing that in your heart. This is batil and this is false. And so some of these people, the Ash'aris in particular, they fell into this bid'ah and this innovation in the issue of Iman, following the likes of Jahm bin Safwan. And likewise in the issue of Al-Qadr, they again made mistakes in that field as well. And there are some other issues as well, many other issues in which they made mistakes. So the point being, it is a mistake to claim and to say that the Ash'aris and the Maturidis are from Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. They are not from Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Rather, these people who fall into mistakes in these great and mighty affairs, in matters of the unseen, like Allah's names and attributes, in matters of belief, it is not possible for this person to be entered into Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So with that, we will conclude our lesson here today, inshallah ta'ala. So we are still on the sentence, وَنَتَّبِعُ السُنَّةَ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ. And these are all of the important issues that we take from this sentence, وَنَتَّبِعُ السُنَّةَ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ. So this indicates to us the meaning of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, who they are, what are their beliefs, and being careful not to include those people who oppose Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah and make ikhtilaf and tafarruq and shudud. They cannot be considered to be from the the Jama'ah in that sense. So we'll conclude our lesson there for today, inshallah, and we'll continue with the remainder of this sentence in relation to ash-shududh wal khilaf wal furqa in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabeena Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. It'll be in, inshallah, 2 weeks' time, the lesson, because next week there's a conference in Birmingham. So it will be in 2 weeks' time, inshallah ta'ala, same time.